The darkness didn't just swallow the balcony, it devoured David, my husband. He sat there motionless the entire night. His shoulders slumped, like every ounce of strength had been drained after saying goodbye to his lover. The night was long and cold, but he didn't move, as if he'd accepted some invisible sentence fate had cast upon him. The next morning, David quietly helped put on our daughter's backpack. But the little girl, her eyes sharp and wounded, pushed his hand away. Not a word, just one look that stopped him cold. The phone buzzed on the table, breaking the suffocating silence. A dry voice echoed through the speaker from his company. "David, you're on temporary leave. We'll be in touch." He put the phone down, his hands trembling slightly, but he said nothing. On the table lay a bouquet of bright red carnations with a gift card from his parents. A consolation, as if a few petals and a small piece of cardboard could patch up the cracks in this house. Only the coffee machine in the kitchen made a noise, its gurgling dragging on forever. And yet I didn't take a single step. Suddenly, he turned around, eyes bloodshot, screaming like the whole universe had just collapsed at his feet. "Hannah, are you satisfied now?" His voice shattered, caught between rage and despair. I didn't answer, just quietly chewed the last bite of toast, watching him. The way he looked, miserable, almost deranged, was all too familiar. Just 2 weeks ago, David had stood in front of both sides of the family, under their prying, judgmental eyes, and played the home surveillance footage. In that video, it was me, the one screaming, the one losing it, the one falling apart. 3 months ago, I found out David was cheating. It was my birthday. He said he'd take our daughter out to get me a gift, his smile soft as always. I stayed home, carefully picked a red dress, did light makeup, hoping tonight would be a sweet memory. But they came home late, very late. My daughter walked in holding an iced latte from Starbucks, a drink she'd never touched because of her lactose allergy. Her eyes hesitated, darting around, as if hiding a secret too big for her small frame. I looked at the latte, then at David. He smiled. That latte was definitely not something David bought. That's when the doubt began. And sure enough, David was having an affair. The woman was Trina Vincent, a new employee at his company who had been there for about 6 months. I'd heard her name before, in the bored tone he used when telling stories. "Trina? She's dumb, always messing things up," he'd say, shaking his head like she was a burden. I even remember gently telling him, "She's young. Give her a chance." He looked at me with a reluctant smile and pulled me into his arms, sighing, "Babe, why are you so kind?" "I'm so lucky to have you," I believed him then. I never imagined that name, Trina Vincent, would become the blade that tore through our marriage. But the truth is always cruel. They didn't even hide it. They held hands, kissed, right in front of our daughter. Was she too young? Or did they think she wouldn't understand? Or maybe it was my blind trust that made him fearless, letting them sneak around right in front of me. They reveled in the thrill of secrecy, as if I were just some fool standing on the sidelines of their story. And yes, the fool was me. My daughter told me everything she'd been hiding about Trina, her voice choked, tears streaming down her face. She clung to me, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. Please don't leave me. Don't let you and Dad divorce." My heart shattered into pieces. The pain of betrayal mixed with the heartbreak of seeing my child, shy, sensitive, carry that burden for far too long. I didn't blame her. I couldn't. I only blamed myself for trusting too easily, for letting love blur my judgment. That night, I held my daughter and cried until morning. The tears weren't just pain. They were a realization that I'd done too many foolish things, like believing David would never cheat, like thinking this family was unbreakable. I decided I'd talk to him the next day. I wanted to face him, ask him what he planned to do with our future, but I didn't expect him to bring Trina. At the cafe below David's office building, I sat on one side, they sat across from me. David asked if I wanted anything, his voice calm like it was just another casual meeting. Then he ordered a cappuccino for Trina without asking, as if it was automatic. They exchanged a glance, a knowing smile, and suddenly I felt misplaced, like an outsider in my own life. David started speaking, his tone level. "Hannah, you're blowing this out of proportion. Trina didn't mean to. She didn't know our daughter was allergic to lactose. She bought the iced latte because she was being kind." The way he said my name, "Hannah," then said hers, "Trina," with such undisguised familiarity, made it impossible for me to even smile. I looked at them, saw Trina glance down, but the corners of her mouth curled slightly, like she was savoring this moment. I wanted to scream, throw the coffee in their faces, smash that fake, polished atmosphere. But I didn't say a word. All my plans, to talk about the family, about the future, collapsed the second Trina walked in. I wanted to ask David what he intended to do, but he thought I was just overreacting because of a latte, because our daughter ended up in the hospital. He brought her along, as if her presence would somehow explain everything. They looked so composed, as if I was the only one who'd lost it. If I hadn't known the truth, maybe I would have apologized. Maybe I would have felt guilty for making things hard for a young girl, fresh out of school, who kindly bought a drink for my child. But I knew. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Every minute I sat there, the blood in my body boiled, but my hands were ice cold, gripping the edge of the table just to stay in control. Finally, I stood up and walked away, my steps growing faster, like I wanted to outrun everything. Behind me, David called my name, his voice tinged with irritation. But he didn't follow. I heard a chair scrape the floor, heard Trina whisper something, but I didn't look back. How can a person change so quickly? David and I had known each other since we were teenagers, our first love, clumsy and sincere. The first time I met him, it was in the school parking lot. He was being ganged up on by a bunch of bullies. I was a 16-year-old girl, too scared to jump in. In a panic, I ran straight into the 7-Eleven at the edge of the lot, grabbed 2 bags of groceries, and rushed outside. The store clerk looked confused. Some customers and onlookers outside froze in shock. As I turned into the lot, I heard footsteps pounding behind me. A bunch of people, employees, customers, were chasing after me, loud as an army. The bullies surrounding David panicked, thinking he had backup. They scattered before realizing what was happening, and just like that, in the dumbest but somehow most effective way, I saved him. Afterward, David and I used our meager pocket money to buy burgers to thank the people at the store. When they heard the full story, everyone laughed and teased us endlessly. David, face still bruised, smiled that goofy but radiant smile, stood up straight and nodded firmly at their teasing. "Yes, I'll repay her for sure," he said confidently. "She's the bravest, kindest, and smartest girl I've ever met." I stood beside him, my cheeks burning with embarrassment, feeling his warm hand graze the hem of my dress. Like an unspoken promise, but now, standing outside the cafe, my eyes stung, not from the sunlight, but from the hot tears trailing down my cheeks. I remembered the way David had just looked at Trina, so serious and gentle, the exact look he once gave me. The clumsy hands of that teenage boy had grown large, still warm, but now reached out to protect another woman. And what about me? What about our daughter? My relationship with David began to unravel into something strange, like a thin thread pulled so tight it was about to snap. Maybe because he knew his affair had been exposed, he began quietly pulling away. He didn't explain, didn't defend himself, just came home less and less. He used to make excuses, overtime, meetings, business trips. Now, not even that. He just disappeared, leaving me and our daughter in a cold house that used to echo with laughter. Our daughter, sensitive and frail since birth, due to a digestive condition, would fall ill whenever she got upset. During those few days in the hospital, both of us grew thin, like the pain had drained every bit of life from us. David visited once, but hadn't been with her long before his phone rang. I stood next to him, hearing Trina's weak, panicked crying through the speaker. He got up immediately, eyes avoiding mine, muttered something, and left. In that moment, a thought slashed through my mind like a blade. Was it because I was getting older, no longer dressed up, no longer playful like I used to be, that he was bored of me? Before leaving the hospital, David habitually put his arm around my shoulder. But I instinctively flinched away. We both froze. He pressed his lips together, looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. I stood there, disgusted with myself. Not brave enough to end this rotting marriage, not strong enough to convince myself to let go. I didn't even have the courage to ask for a proper conversation. A month later, I realized I was sinking deeper into a pit of emotion. I was snapping at everything, couldn't breathe, had headaches, couldn't sleep at night. I turned to my best friend, then went to see a therapist alone. I couldn't let myself go on like this. I still had my parents. I still had my daughter. I had to save myself. In the therapist's office, I found a bit of light. She comforted me, suggested ways to preserve a marriage. I admitted I didn't want a divorce. I had promised my daughter a complete home. Try to refresh the relationship, the therapist said. A date, a shared activity. Maybe it can rekindle the spark. I followed her advice, even though I was full of doubt. After leaving the hospital, I bought a bold set of lingerie I'd never dared wear before, and picked out an expensive bottle of wine David had always wanted. For the first time in over a month, I called him. His voice over the phone was gentle, slightly surprised. "Hannah, are you okay?" I thought maybe that was a good sign. But that evening, when he came home for dinner, his eyes were distant. His hands kept checking his phone. Every time the screen lit up, my fingernails dug deeper into my palms, but I still forced a smile and poured the wine into his glass. Eventually, he looked up from his phone, gazed at me with a complicated expression, and downed the glass. When he reached out to touch me, I felt an eerie unfamiliarity. My whole body tensed up. I had to fight the urge to pull away, even closed my eyes just to get through it. A notification sound shattered everything. I opened my eyes and saw the name Trina glowing on his screen. My heart stopped. When I came to, David had picked up the phone and stepped out onto the balcony. I stood there in nothing but that flimsy lingerie, stunned. A humiliation I had never known surged up in me, like a sharp knife slicing through skin. My face burned, but my body turned ice cold, frozen to the core. Not long after, David came back in, brushed past me like I was invisible. He grabbed his coat off the sofa, slipped it on, and said in a flat voice, "There's something at work. I won't be back tonight." He took a deep breath, paused for a second, then added, "Sleep early." The door closed gently, but to me, it sounded like a slammed gate, locking away every last hope I had left. I stood there, unmoving, my whole body frozen from the inside out. I don't know how long after, but my phone buzzed once. A notification from Facebook. Trina had sent me a friend request. As if possessed, I accepted. Almost instantly, she sent 2 photos. I opened them, hands trembling. The first was a medical record, my name on it, like a cruel reminder of the days I was weak. The second was a pregnancy report, with her name, Trina Vincent. My heart clenched. She sent a voice message request. I declined immediately, eyes still locked on the ultrasound slip, knowing I had nothing left to say to either of them. 3 days later, David came home. He had called a few times, but I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but because I felt like a ticking time bomb. I couldn't take one more blow. Not picking up was the last shred of sanity I had left. To protect myself, to protect Lily, to protect a home already crumbling. But deep down, something whispered, this home couldn't be saved. From the way I and Lily acted, David knew I had found out everything. He dropped the facade. When he was home, he changed completely. From silent avoidance to blatant provocation. He called Trina right in front of me, voice syrupy sweet, saying things lovers say. When Lily opened the gift he brought, he exploded with rage, said it was a special gift he bought for Trina, said my daughter was a poorly raised brat. I froze, watching my child shrink back, tears welling in her eyes. When my parents came to visit Lily, my father accidentally drank the coffee David made, and David mocked him nonstop for nearly half an hour. I was pushed to the edge, turning into a bitter woman, screaming, fighting with him again and again. And he? He sat calmly on the couch, eyes cold, as he watched me lose control. In his flat, merciless voice, he'd say, Hannah, what happened to you? Do you want to destroy this family? I'm truly disappointed in you. Every word from him was a knife. He used everything, Lily, my parents, to drive me insane. Then he dragged me to the mirror, forced me to look at myself, messy hair, bloodshot eyes, a twisted face from anger. He sighed, pretending to be helpless. Look at you. Pathetic. But in his eyes, I saw the glint of triumph. I was exhausted, no longer myself. Until one huge fight, I overheard him on the phone with his mother. She reminded him to take care of Trina's pregnancy. David just muttered, voice heavy, I know. Just stop interfering, he sighed. And in that moment, it hit me. David wanted a divorce, but because his company valued morality, he didn't dare say it. So he was provoking me on purpose, pushing me to the brink, waiting for me to say the word divorce. How ridiculous. 10 years of love, and he couldn't even say it out loud. I felt sorry for myself. That night, I took Lily to my parents' house. Before we left, I hugged her tightly, voice shaking. I'm sorry. I couldn't give you a whole family. Lily didn't cry. She hugged me even tighter, her voice small but firm. Mom, you haven't smiled in a long time. If smiling means not having Dad, then I don't need him. My tears fell, but this time, not from pain. They fell because I knew I had to move forward. For Lily. For myself. The next day, I held my phone, fingers trembling on the screen. I took a deep breath and called David. Let's get a divorce, I said, my voice flat, like reading out a sentence. And the moment those words left my mouth, a strange sense of relief flooded in, like I had just taken off an invisible shackle. On the other end, David was silent for so long, I could hear his heavy breathing. I didn't know what he was thinking, and for the first time, I didn't care to guess. A few days later, on our 10th wedding anniversary, David suddenly invited friends and both sides of the family to a fancy hotel. Chandelier lights sparkled, glasses clinked, but the air was heavy like a storm waiting to explode. Before the dinner began, he pulled me into a small room, dim light from the wall sconce casting cold shadows across his face. Hannah, Trina's pregnant. It's a boy, he said, voice low but sharp. I stood frozen, like the floor had collapsed beneath me. You want a divorce? I agree, but I have conditions. For the first time in so long, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by that cold, decisive stare. The 3 houses in our marriage stay with me. Savings. We split 70-30, my favor. I can take care of Lily, but if you want custody, I won't stop you. He paused, watching for my reaction. If you agree, we file right away. If not, I thought I misheard. All the houses go to you, and my daughter and I only get 30% of the savings. I looked at him, stunned. David, do you even hear what you're saying? My voice shook, not from fear, but from the fire rising in my chest. We've been married 10 years. I haven't worked a single day. And who asked me to quit? You did. You begged me to stay home, said Lily was fragile and needed me. You said your parents were old and needed care. You begged me to be your support system so you could focus on your career. And now this. These are the words you say to me? David, are you even human anymore? Smack. I couldn't help myself. I slapped him. The sound echoed in the small room like a gunshot, shattering the last bit of his mask. His face turned dark, eyes dropped, too ashamed to look at me. He clenched his fist, voice cold as ice. That's the deal. If you don't agree? I laughed, not hysterically like before, but a dry, bitter laugh filled with despair. What if I don't agree? Go ahead, tell me, what are you going to do? The door burst open. A sharp female voice cut in like a blade. What did I tell you? Women like her only go after your money. Of course she won't let go that easily. Trina stood there, arms folded, lips curled in a mocking smile. David gave me one last long look, then turned and walked away without saying a word. I stood there, feeling the world collapse around me, but somehow my legs still held me up. What happened next felt like a nightmare. In the banquet hall, in front of friends and family, David played a video on a giant screen. At first, I wasn't paying attention. My mind was still spinning from what happened in that small room, from Trina's intrusion. But the whispers and looks from the crowd jolted me. I looked up, and my heart stopped. On the screen was a blurred-out video, but I could tell it was me, standing awkwardly in the living room, wearing that bold lingerie from that night, looking ridiculous and out of place. Then more clips. Me screaming at David, face twisted, hair a mess, scenes from different days, different clothes, but all of them showing me as some kind of mad woman. The sound was muted, making it all look even more ridiculous and horrifying. The stares, the murmurs, they felt like knives slashing my skin. Lily looked at me, tears welling up, both scared and heartbroken. I dropped to my knees, ears ringing, unable to hear anything clearly. I foolishly wondered, how did this video from our home end up here? Then, as the video ended, David pulled out his phone and played a recording of my voice. Let's get a divorce, cold and clear. He looked around the room, face heavy, voice calm. Sorry to disturb everyone, but if I don't explain why we're divorcing, people might think I'm ungrateful or heartless. He gave a strained smile, like he was the victim. I tried, but Hannah kept pushing me. You've all seen what she's become. I couldn't take it anymore, so I agreed to divorce. He turned to my parents, voice full of fake warmth. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. Even if Hannah and I separate, if you ever need anything, I'll still be here. She's lived in our home all these years. If not for her efforts, then at least for her sacrifices. I won't abandon you. His words were so perfect, I almost believed the man in that small room wasn't the same David. He pushed all the blame onto me, painted himself as generous and noble. I wanted to scream, to explain. But after that video and audio, who would believe me? Even I, watching myself on that screen, hair a mess, eyes red, face twisted, found myself hateful, like someone unhinged. How would outsiders believe otherwise? I couldn't understand how David could do all this. For Trina, for a divorce. Was he still human? 10 years, and I never saw this coming. I heard my parents bowing their heads, apologizing to David and his parents, their voices small, full of shame. My mother-in-law cried, scolded, wailed, asked why I tortured her son. Mutual friends comforted David like he was the one wronged. His boss patted his shoulder. You've been through a lot. I don't even remember how that night ended. I only know that I became a joke, and everything I ever believed in shattered under the lights of that hotel. Not long ago, my phone buzzed again. A ting. Trina had sent me a friend request on Facebook. As if possessed, I accepted. She immediately sent 2 photos. The first was a medical report with my name, like a cruel reminder of my weakest days. The second was a pregnancy report with her name, Trina Vincent. My heart clenched. She sent a voice request. I declined, eyes still locked on that slip, knowing I had nothing left to say. 3 days later, David came home. He'd called a few times, but I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because I felt like a bomb about to explode. Not picking up was my last ounce of sanity. Protecting me, protecting Lily, protecting a house that was already falling apart. But deep down, I knew. That house couldn't be saved. From the way Lily and I acted, David knew I had found out. He dropped the act. At home, he completely changed. From silent avoidance to blatant provocation. He called Trina right in front of me, voice sweet. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." When Lily opened a gift he brought, he lashed out. "That was for Trina! Can't you teach your kid any manners?" I stood in shock, watching my daughter shrink, eyes brimming with tears. When my parents came over, my father accidentally drank David's coffee, and David mocked, "Seems like everyone here likes taking what's not theirs." I was pushed to the edge, fighting, yelling again and again. He sat there calmly, cold eyes watching me unravel. From the couch, in a flat but cutting tone, "Hannah, what happened to you? You want to destroy this family? I'm truly disappointed." Every word was a knife. He dragged me to the mirror, made me look at myself, hair wild, eyes red, face contorted. He sighed, pretending to pity me. "Look at yourself. So pathetic." But in his eyes, I saw victory. I was exhausted, losing myself. Until one argument, I overheard him talking to his mother. She told him to take care of Trina's baby. David just mumbled, "I know, stop meddling." I stood there, stunned, finally realizing David wanted a divorce, but because his company valued family ethics, he didn't dare ask. So he provoked me, pushed me until I broke, until I said the word divorce 10 years, and he couldn't even say it out loud. I felt so sorry for myself. That night, I took Lily back to my parents' house. I hugged her, choking back tears. "I'm sorry." "I couldn't give you a whole family." Lily didn't cry. She held me tight, voice steady. "Mom, you haven't smiled lately." If smiling means not having Dad around, I'm okay with that. My tears flowed. But this time, not from pain. I knew I had to move forward. The next day, I picked up my phone and called David. "Let's get a divorce." The moment I said it, a strange sense of relief washed over me, as if I had just taken off an invisible shackle. On the other end of the line, David said nothing. So quiet I could hear his heavy breathing. I didn't know what he was thinking, and for once, I didn't care. A few days later, on our 10th wedding anniversary, David unexpectedly invited our friends and both families to a fancy hotel. Chandelier lights sparkled, wine glasses clinked, but the atmosphere felt suffocating, like a storm about to break. Before the party began, he pulled me into a small room, dimly lit by a wall sconce that cast a cold, unfamiliar glow on his face. "Hannah, Trina is pregnant. It's a boy," he said, his voice low but sharp. I stood frozen, like the floor had crumbled beneath me. "You want a divorce? I agree. But I have conditions." For the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes, but it disappeared quickly, replaced by cold determination. "The 3 houses under our name stay with me. The savings. We split 70 to 30. I can raise Lily, but if you want custody, fine." He paused, watching me as if waiting for a reaction. "If you agree, we'll start the paperwork immediately." "If not," I thought I misheard. "All the houses go to you, and my daughter and I only get 30% of the savings." I looked at him in disbelief. "David, do you even hear what you're saying? We've been married 10 years, Hannah, and you haven't worked a single day. All the money in this house. I earned it. Smack!" I couldn't help it. I slapped him. The sound cracked through the small room, like an explosion, shattering whatever mask was left. My voice shook. And who asked me to quit? You did. You begged me to stay home, said Lily's health was fragile and she needed full-time care. You said your aging parents needed someone. You pleaded with me to be your support so you could focus on your career. And now this? These are the words you have for me? David, are you even human anymore? His face turned purple, eyes dropped, unable to meet mine. He clenched his fists, voice ice cold. That's the deal. If you don't agree, I laughed. Not manically, but a dry, broken laugh. If I don't agree, what? Say it. What are you going to do? The door flung open. A woman's voice sliced through the air like a blade. What did I say? Women like her are always after a man's money. Why would she walk away from property that easily? Trina stood there, arms crossed, lips curled in contempt. David looked at me deeply, then turned and walked away without another word. I stood there, feeling like the entire world was collapsing, but somehow my legs held me up. What happened next felt like a nightmare. In the banquet hall, in front of friends and relatives, David played a video on a giant screen. At first, I wasn't paying attention, still dizzy from what he said in that room, from Trina's sudden appearance. But the murmurs and strange looks from the crowd jolted me. I looked up, and my heart stopped. On screen was a video of me, standing awkwardly in the living room, wearing that bold lingerie from that night, looking ridiculous, like some strange fool. Then more clips followed, me screaming at David, face twisted, hair wild, scenes from different days, different outfits, but always me, looking like a lunatic. The audio was muted, making the images even more absurd and terrifying. The judging eyes, the whispers, they cut into my skin like knives. Lily looked at me, eyes watery, both scared and heartbroken. I dropped to my knees, ears ringing, unable to hear anything clearly. In my stupid confusion, I wondered, how did footage from inside our home end up here? Then, as the video ended, David pulled out his phone and played a voice recording. My voice. Let's get a divorce. Cold and clear. He looked around the room, face heavy, but his tone calm. Sorry to disturb everyone, but if I don't explain the reason for our divorce, people might think I'm cruel or ungrateful. He gave a bitter smile, like a victim. I tried. But Hannah kept pushing me. You've all seen what she's become. I couldn't take it anymore, so I agreed to the divorce. His words were so smooth, I almost believed the man in that private room wasn't the same David. He dumped all the blame on me, painting himself as the noble, long-suffering husband. I wanted to scream, to defend myself. But under the weight of the video and recording, who would believe me? Even I, watching myself on that screen, wild hair, red eyes, distorted face, couldn't stand the sight. How could strangers believe otherwise? I couldn't understand how David could go this far. For Trina. For a divorce. Was he a man or a monster? 10 years, and I never saw it. I heard my parents bowing their heads, apologizing to David and his parents, their voices low, full of shame. My mother-in-law sobbed, yelling, accusing me of tormenting her son. Mutual friends patted David's back, consoling him as though he was the one wronged. His boss clapped him on the shoulder. You've been through enough. I don't even remember how that night ended. All I know is, I had become a joke, and everything I once believed in shattered beneath the hotel lights. I don't remember how I got home. The last image burned into my mind was Lily's little face, scrunched from crying, her red eyes brimming with tears. She screamed, her tiny voice filled with despair. My mom is not crazy. My parents rushed to carry her out, her sobs fading behind the hotel doors. I stood there in the banquet hall, beneath glittering chandeliers that seemed to mock me, surrounded by whispers from friends and relatives that sliced into my chest like knives. I don't know how much time passed before I looked up and found myself in my own living room, alone. The room was cold, still, like the entire world had abandoned me. On the breakfast table was a small note Lily had left. Her shaky, crooked handwriting trembled across the page. I will never leave you, Mommy. Please get better. Don't leave me. The dried teardrops had smudged the ink, but every word stabbed into my heart. I gripped the note, my hands shaking, then stood and looked around the room. My eyes landed on the surveillance camera on the wall. Its lifeless eye had captured the worst moments of me. Without thinking, I grabbed a flower vase and hurled it at the camera. The crash of shattering glass rang out sharp and clear, like breaking one of the chains still clutching my heart. I turned to the wedding photo on the wall, me and David smiling, now just a sick joke. I smashed the frame, shards of glass scattered across the floor. But strangely, I felt completely calm. No screaming, no sobbing, just a cold clarity rising inside me. I realized that if I kept living like this, I would die. Not a physical death, but the death of who I was. David would drive me mad, or I'd end it myself, or I'd drag everyone down with me. I couldn't let that happen. Lily was waiting for me. That night, I sat on the rooftop, freezing night wind slashing across my face. I thought long and hard about the medical report Trina had sent me, about how she got it. No matter how I turned it over in my mind, all I had were guesses. No proof. If I wanted answers, I'd have to confront it directly. The next morning, I went to the psychology clinic where I had been treated. I showed Dr. Rebecca Lawson the photo of the medical record, one Trina had sent then quickly deleted, but I had saved it in time. Dr. Lawson's face turned pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Disclosing a patient's information is a serious ethical breach, enough to destroy her career and the clinic's reputation. She didn't deny it, only stammered that she was friends with Trina, then begged me not to escalate it, even offering compensation. I silently recorded the conversation, staring at her coldly as she pleaded. Without replying, I left the clinic, with the evidence I needed in hand. In the days that followed, I texted David, pretending to be weak, begging him to come home to talk. He said he'd only come back if I agreed to the asset division terms. I smiled at the phone screen, knowing he wouldn't be able to sit still much longer. After Dr. Lawson learned she was being sued, she must have gone to Trina, and only David could clean up that mess. When David returned home, I was sitting calmly on the living room sofa, slowly sipping coffee. I used to hate coffee, thought it was too bitter, but now my taste buds felt dead. Everything was just liquid. David stood at the door, breathless like he'd just sprinted here. He looked at me, eyes flashing with anger and confusion, not expecting me to be sitting there so still, so composed. I smiled and lifted my cup. The coffee smells nice. Never noticed it before, but now I can taste something in it. Come, sit. David pressed his lips together and sat down across from me. His face twitched with surprise, like he'd been bracing for a screaming match. Not this woman. Calm, poised, with a soft smile. He took a deep breath, trying to sound civil. Hannah, drop the lawsuit. I'll give you 2% more of the assets. I said nothing, just poured him a cup of coffee and slid it over. His brows furrowed, voice firmer. 50% of the savings, plus the house in the suburbs. Hannah, don't be greedy. $2 million is enough for you to live comfortably. Still silent, I took another sip, then slowly said, I know why you did it the way you did. You wanted me to snap, to look insane, to put all the filth on me, to make me ask for the divorce. That way you'd look clean, I smirked, a cold smile. Isn't it because you and Trina knew I was seeing a therapist, so you came up with this plan? David's eyes flickered, but he didn't respond. I continued, voice soft, like telling a story. I also know you two have been together for a long time. You've been cruel to me because Trina forced you, because the baby was conceived during our marriage, and she threatened to report you to your company for infidelity. Even the unfair asset division, she made you do that. David, after 10 years of marriage, I know who you are. You're not that heartless, I didn't believe that. If I did, how could I have ended up so destroyed? But I needed him to lower his guard, so I swallowed my fury and said what I had to. Sure enough, David's face softened, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. He said hoarsely, I'm sorry, Hannah. I really am. It's my fault, he bowed his head, voice weakening. You know how important work is to me. I'm up for a promotion. I didn't have a choice. Trina, at first it was just a mistake. I didn't expect her to get pregnant. His eyebrow twitched. She threatened me. I had no choice. I lowered my gaze, hiding a cold smile. Pathetic. A man like David, love wouldn't save him. I only blamed myself for being blind back then. He kept going. Hannah, just let me go. I'll take care of you and Lily, I promise. You know I'm the only one who can give our daughter a good life. For her sake, you should… I cut him off, voice even. And what if I don't agree? David froze, looking up at me, panic flashing in his eyes. The same look I once had when I saw myself on that giant hotel screen. I laughed, pulled out my phone, and played a video. A real-time feed from the living room camera popped up, every detail sharp and clear. Nice, huh? I smiled. In the footage, I too sat facing away from the camera, wearing that same cold smile. You thought deleting the previous footage was enough? I looked straight at him, voice ice cold. David, you know exactly what you just said. Now listen to me. Before 5 p.m. today, I want you to break up with Trina, in front of me. For Lily's sake, I'm giving you one chance to make things right. After 5 p.m., this video goes to your bosses. You and that woman backed me into a corner. You know I'll do it, you. You're insane. David shot up, face pale, fists clenched. I raised an eyebrow. That shook you? Your father's birthday's coming, right? Should I book a few tables at the hotel? You should thank me. For Lily's sake, I'm still willing to preserve your name. David staggered, almost fell, then collapsed onto the sofa, lips trembling, unable to speak. David, I'll be waiting here. Now go see Trina. He looked up, eyes red with fury, fist clenched so tight the veins bulged. Hannah, after 10 years, how can you be this heartless? I nodded, smiling. You're right, we're the same kind of people. David stumbled out the door, his figure disappearing behind it, leaving me there, still holding my coffee, feeling the warmth seep into every fingertip. At 4:50 p.m., the door swung open. David walked in, followed by Trina, her high heels clicking sharply on the wooden floor. She smiled, her eyes sweeping across the living room like she'd already imagined herself living in this house. But when she saw me sitting on the sofa, coffee cup still steaming in my hand, her smile froze. David stood in front of me, took a deep breath, then turned to Trina, his voice low but firm. Trina, we're over. Trina's expression shifted so fast it was dizzying. From smugness to shock, then fury, and finally collapse, all within seconds. Her lips trembled, her voice cutting like a knife. What did you just say? David, how dare you? I sat there, coldly watching her threaten to ruin him. Then the two of them turned on each other, and David was forced to promise her $2 million and a house. Trina calculated for a moment, then finally agreed. I looked at David's disheveled, confused, visibly wounded face. I understood why he was heartbroken. All the things he told me, that Trina had pressured him, that he had no choice, were lies. And everything I had said about Trina, I had made it up on purpose, just to corner him, to make him believe he still had the upper hand. Only when he said those words would my recording truly have value. David had once loved Trina, deeply and blindly, but now, faced with her twisted, unhinged expression, he crumbled. I watched him and saw the disappointment in his eyes, and for the first time, I felt satisfied. This play, I had directed it, and it brought me both physical and emotional pleasure. The surveillance camera was still recording, capturing every moment. This part, I would keep as a reminder to stay sharper, colder. That evening, David came home holding a bouquet of bright red roses, as if trying to smooth everything over. He stood at the door, a stiff smile on his face, waiting for some reaction from me. I looked at the flowers, then slowly stood up and threw them straight into the trash. The sound of petals hitting the bin echoed dryly. David froze, eyes wide in disbelief, as if he couldn't grasp what had just happened. I smiled, my voice soft but sharp. Don't think I brought you home because I still love you or want to make this work. David, do you think you're worthy? I turned and walked toward the bedroom, never looking back. In the surveillance footage, I knew he was still standing there, frozen, panicked, stunned. It pleased me, like medicine easing the bleeding in my chest. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and worked late a little more. That night, I wrote an email to David's company detailing the unfair asset division he had planned. 3 houses for him, only 30% of the savings for me and our daughter. I knew the email wouldn't get him seriously punished, but the company would likely ask him to take time off to handle family matters, just to keep his crazy wife from causing trouble and damaging their image. I compiled the day's surveillance footage, carefully backed it up, and sent a copy to David's parents. When that was done, I packed Lily's school bag. Then I held her tight. And finally, after all these months, I sank into a deep, restful sleep, one without nightmares. The next morning, on Lily's first day of school, pale sunlight slipped through the curtains and fell across the breakfast table. David stepped in from the balcony, his eyes red and his face weary. He pointed to 2 elegant jewelry boxes on the table, his voice trying to stay calm. My parents stopped by early this morning, brought you these 2 pieces. Mom said to come home for dinner tonight. I didn't respond, just slowly bit into a piece of toast, my eyes gliding past him like he was a stranger. Lily, wearing her small backpack, said goodbye. Mom, I'm heading out. I smiled gently. Okay, be careful going down. Yes, she replied, her voice bright and clear. David quickly moved to help carry her backpack, but Lily slapped his hand away, firm and decisive, her cold gaze like a final verdict. David turned to look at me, but then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, froze, and finally answered. I couldn't hear what was being said on the other end, but his expression darkened with every second. His lips tightened, his hand gripping the phone until it turned white. I took a slow sip of juice, savoring the sight of his face draining of color. It was perfect, completely satisfying. In the kitchen, the coffee machine suddenly screeched, boiling water bubbling over in a loud, mocking song. I didn't move, letting the sound echo. David, standing at the door, suddenly threw his phone to the floor. The crack echoed dry and harsh. He screamed, voice filled with desperation. Hannah, are you happy now? I didn't answer, just looked at him, thinking, am I happy? Of course, but this is still not enough. The things that will truly satisfy me haven't even started yet. In the days that followed, I returned every ounce of pain David had caused me. Each day, I changed the way I tormented him, reminding him that I held the evidence, the recording of his confession. I let him live in fear, uncertain every minute. That evening, I didn't go to my in-laws' house. The next day, they called via video, speaking gently, trying to reason with me, but I just smiled politely, neither lashing out nor giving in. Then they brought David, along with my own parents, to my house. In front of me, David bowed and apologized to my parents. My in-laws stood nearby with forced smiles, but the cold stares from my parents made them squirm. They shamelessly begged my parents to convince me to forgive. But my parents, after hearing Lily's version and mine, understood. They knew that once I made a decision, nothing would change it. When the grandparents asked Lily to help her father apologize, the 9-year-old girl firmly refused. I don't want to, Lily said, her voice small but steady, eyes staring at David, full of hurt. You and that woman hurt Mom. You don't have time for me. You even scolded me. I looked at her, Heartbreaking but proud. In the end, I nodded and agreed to the divorce. David, as if he couldn't wait any longer, immediately drafted the agreement. All properties were transferred to Lily. The savings split 70 to 30. I got 70, he got 30, and I was granted full custody of Lily. When he handed me the agreement, his hands were trembling, eyes desperate and anxious. I smiled, letting him suffer in uncertainty for a while before I finally signed. David collapsed, as if all the strength had drained from him, his face pale, his eyes empty. After leaving court, I handed over all the surveillance footage and backups to him. I once wanted to completely destroy him, the way he once tried to destroy me. But I knew what I truly needed was for Lily and my parents to be okay. Cornering someone isn't wise. Not like the way David had cornered me. If he hadn't pushed me into a dead end, maybe things would have been different. If he had just let us go. If he hadn't used my illness to ruin me. He wouldn't be in this situation now. I know David won't live in peace. Trina isn't easy. She had already quit her job for the pregnancy, and David's troubles were only just beginning. But none of that concerns me anymore. 6 months after moving to the new city, during a phone call with my parents, I learned that after I left with Lily, Trina turned on David and pressured him to marry her immediately. But his company valued employee ethics, and he was competing for a higher position. Divorcing his crazy wife, like me, earned him sympathy, but marrying a former employee who was already pregnant, with a child conceived during his marriage, was completely unacceptable. David, who always cared about his reputation, and had once gone so far as to manipulate me into a breakdown so he could play the victim, told Trina to wait. But she had no intention of waiting. Maybe forcing me to the edge had made her confident she could do the same to David. In the end, when she caused a scene at his office, David lost his promotion opportunity. For someone as prideful as him, it was a devastating blow. David started reaching out to me again, his voice full of regret. "Hannah, after you left, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Trina is insane. You're the only one who ever truly loved me. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you and Lily." I listened, but all I felt was how ridiculous it was. I cut off all contact, never giving him a chance to step back into my life. Autumn arrived gently in Seattle, like a whisper of wind carrying the scent of the sea and dried golden leaves. I brought Lily here, to a place steeped in art, where murals covered the walls and street corners echoed with the music of local performers. Lily, who had loved painting since she was little, seemed to come alive here. She joined the school's art club, her small hands painting vibrant pictures, her eyes glowing with a joy I hadn't seen in so long. Each afternoon, I sat by the window of our little apartment, watching her blend colors at her easel, soft light touching her messy hair. And I felt something fragile but real, like the freedom of a bird just released from its iron cage. I started over too, slowly, like a river searching for its path after a flood. I went to therapy, not as a patient anymore, but as someone learning to finally listen to herself. In the mornings, I worked at a small bookstore, sorting through old books, wiping the dust from covers like I was gently cleaning the scars inside me. Every small act, arranging shelves, cleaning, or just walking along leaf-filled streets, felt like a new breath, light but steady. I was no longer the woman betrayed by her husband, trembling in pain. I was Hannah, learning how to smile without hiding, learning to let light seep through the cracks in my heart. Our apartment sat on a quiet street, its window looking out onto a lush green park where Lily often played with friends. Every night, we sat at our little dining table, warm yellow light spilling over our simple meals. Lily would tell me about her newest paintings, her art teacher, her dream of becoming an artist. I listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes just quietly holding her hand, feeling her small warmth like a gentle reminder that I had made the right choice to choose freedom, to choose healing, to choose a new beginning. The old nightmares had faded, replaced by peaceful days where I no longer had to brace myself just to survive. Beneath the Seattle moonlight, no longer cold like that old balcony, I found myself in the simplest moments: the sound of Lily's laughter, the smell of old books, and the breath of freedom threading through each day. I used to think love was a shackle, but now I know true love is letting yourself bloom, even through the storm or under the gentlest sun. Freedom isn't about running from the past. It's about daring to rise from the ashes and painting your life all over again.